I helped Property Hub get 2.7 million views, 8,500 leads, and 360 book calls in just 12 months, all via YouTube. And that's organic YouTube with no paid ads. That's roughly 300 times more book calls than the previous year, and it equates to multiple millions in potential revenue. So how do we do it? Well, in this video, I'm going to talk you through the 4 big changes we made to blow up Property Hub's business with YouTube and how you can replicate this success in your own property business. If you have a YouTube channel already, this is the easiest way to find winning formulas and guarantee success for your videos. So the first thing we did is we went back through old videos and identified what had worked in the past and why. We made a big list of winning video ideas and then tried to work out if we could turn those videos into series. For example, there were a couple of videos talking about different areas to invest that had performed really well. So we wrote them down, took a step back, and then we tried to work out ways to remix that same video idea using the same core format with slight tweaks to the content. Because we knew that this title structure had performed well. The 5 X areas to buy in year. So then the question becomes, what other power words might our ideal client click on? And from there, the best areas to invest became the worst areas to invest, the cheapest areas to invest, etc., etc. We also noticed that this tweet format of the Prime Minister had worked really well. So we took that concept, cleaned it up, and then tested with a few different formats, and we kept reiterating until we had this banger, which is the highest ever performing video on the channel. And we've done this across multiple property channels in multiple different countries, and every single time this has been a shortcut to success. Understand what's worked, how can we make it work again, and then keep on testing and iterating until we have another banger. And one really important point to mention here is that people rarely watch every single video on your channel. If you think about the typical buying cycle of somebody interested in property, they aren't constantly looking to buy. Granted, they might stay up to date with the news, but they might only go through the educational cycle of learning about property once. They subscribe, and then they go off, live their life, and they might come back a year or two later when they need more information or they're looking at buying again. So you really don't need to be worried about repeating the same information. Now, ideally, you change how the information is presented or you explain things in a different way, but ultimately people need to be reminded and hear the same information multiple times to take action. And I promise you, apart from a couple of weirdos, nobody is sitting there watching every single video you release. And unless every single video that you create is an absolute banger 1 of 10, the algorithm won't even be showing your content to your subscribers most of the time. So the bottom line here is don't be afraid to repeat what's already worked, because people like that. By the way, if you want access to this worksheet and you want to go through this exercise yourself, you can click on the link in the description and download our YouTube for Property Playbook, which gives you access to all of the resources and tutorials we use on a day-to-day basis to create viral YouTube videos in the property niche. So after creating our list of predefined potential winners, we went and looked at both our direct competition and also people in adjacent niches to understand what people are currently clicking on and why. And to explain this in the best way possible, I'm going to insert a clip that talks you through exactly how you can do this yourself. So there are 3 parts to this, and I'm going to talk you through the first one with a live example that I've already prepared for you. So what we really want to do here is understand the property niche in as much detail as possible, and we want to understand what people are clicking on, why they're clicking on it, and who ultimately is clicking on it as well, right? So there are some examples in here that I've just left in for you, but I'm going to talk you through these 2 in particular because yeah, I've got the channel open here for you. So this is a guy who is famous within Australia for property investing. His name is Ravi Sharma. So if you're from Australia, you'll probably know him. And yeah, if I were wanting to come up with video ideas as somebody that's just starting out in the property niche, what I would firstly do is I would generally just have a look through the channel to start off with, just have a look at, okay, what he's talking about, etc. But then I would come over to popular as a first point of call. And then I would start just having a look at the most viewed videos and then transferring them back to our spreadsheet here. So how to retire filthy rich in Australia. And I would then start noting down the topics. So basically, what is it that he's talking about? And why are those topics getting more clicks? So that would be retire with property or retire in Australia. I would then have a look at the power words, as we call them. So what is it specifically about that title that's different or that's really grabbing your attention? So you need to just have a little bit of a think about this yourself to say, okay, well, why would that have made someone click? And it just takes a little bit of thinking on your own part there. So in this case, if I look at that objectively, has retire filthy rich in Australia, that's a really powerful sentence with retire filthy rich. I think that's the bit that's really doing the heavy lifting there. So retire filthy rich, I'd note that down, rich as well, probably. And then the other important thing is to really understand the thumbnail, because that's getting a lot of the click, right? So here I can see retire with only 2 properties, with 2 properties there. And that again is quite a big statement. So that would be noted down here in terms of the title thumbnail patterns. So yeah, I can start to understand retire filthy rich in Australia and retire with 2 properties. Okay. Now, what's really, really important, there are 2 things here. Firstly, is that you're probably looking at this thinking, okay, I could just literally come in here, screenshot that, or screenshot a load of the stuff, or copy load of the titles into so yeah, sorry, on the wrong tab. I could literally just screenshot a lot of this or copy a lot of this into ChatGPT and then ask it to spit out ideas for you. You can, 100%. The thing is, it makes such a difference, and I make everybody on my team do this literally on a weekly basis. If you can understand yourself and spend the time going through this and like actually manually putting this into a spreadsheet, it makes such a difference to your understanding of what works and what doesn't. And then when you go away and use AI and use tools like that, you can actually have a look at it objectively and say, okay, well, what that's given me, I've now got 3, 5, 10 options, whatever, and I know which ones are going to work because I personally understand it. And so that's going to help you make AI more of your assistant as opposed to relying on it to hopefully come up with some good ideas. Whereas you're the person with all the experience in the niche and you've actually gone away and done this research, right? So it's really, really important to do this manually, even if it's a pain in the backside. And the second thing is here, I've mentioned this if you watch any of the other modules, it's so important to not just grab this idea, particularly if you're based in Australia, and be like, oh, retire filthy rich in Australia, retire with 2 properties. Oh, that's a great video. I'm just going to copy that and do it myself. That is a surefire way to be second best and for stuff not to work very well because they've already seen it on Ravi Sharma's channel. And so now you're just going to copy and do, like yeah, just don't do that. Granted, if you're based in the UK, you can maybe get away with it, but I would still say take that idea, and you want to do this with not just one idea, but as many as you can. So literally try and get hundreds of ideas out here. And then once you have the understanding of multiple different power words, multiple different titles, thumbnails, etc., that have worked, then what that allows you to do is say, okay, well, how to retire filthy rich in UK using property? Then I can potentially use that title because that could be interesting. But then rather than retire 2 properties, could it be 1 property? And then rather than using the exact same thumbnail, could we not slightly tweak that and use something else that we know that has worked, like with a graph or whatever it might be, to just make it look and feel different? And yeah, as opposed to just copying blindly, because that, yeah, just doesn't tend to work very well. So whatever you do when you go away and you steal these little bits from other people's channels, always really try to make something unique at the end of the day, because as long as if it's unique, plus it's got all of these power words in, it's still proven to get clicks, right? So that's what the ultimate aim of this is. And then the other thing that you need to be careful of is, so if I were going down here, the next one obviously on the list would be the recession is here. What will happen to Australian real estate prices? So I'd take that, copy it across to our spreadsheet. So this is where it's important to understand why and who is clicking on this, right? So the recession is here. What will happen to Australian real estate prices? Okay. Then we can see the thumbnail. It's prepare, downward graph, and red. So I'm just going to flip back for reference. Okay, great. That's got a lot of views, but who's clicking on that and why are they clicking? So ultimately, they're clicking because they've heard there's a recession and they're interested in Australian property prices, but that doesn't mean that they want to invest in property. So this would be a classic example of in the content funnel for real estate, where that's going to drive traffic, but we're not 100% sure if that's going to drive the right type of person and if that's going to drive buyers. This probably will, because you're teaching somebody how to invest in property and they're clicking on that because they're interested in real estate investing. Whereas this is more of a traffic video that's people are and granted, investors are interested in house prices, but so are lots of other people. So you just need to be aware of, if you're going, because there are lots of channels like this, if you come onto a channel, go to popular, and you see that everything on the top row is just recession, the crash, house price crash, mortgage crisis, etc., then you need to just take that with a little bit of a pinch of salt and say, you can still note them down because the packaging obviously is working, but then you want to go further down the list as well and start to have a look at other things that have worked. So yeah, like great, enters recession, passive income, like passive income in Australia. Interesting. Like, is it something about passive income in real estate? Does that drive the right person? So again, you need to ask yourself that question. And again, you want to look at this stuff and understand, not just blindly copy what's worked, but understand, okay, could that idea work for my channel? And does that make any sense for my channel? Right. So if I were having a look here, like there's something about this, right? So buy 5+ properties faster, how to beat 99% of real estate investors in 2025. Again, that's very targeted and specific for investors. That's more of a conversion video, right? It's unlikely that a random person is going to click on that. So again, I'd copy that one across. Bam. Interesting. And then buy 5+ properties faster. So I'd be writing like buy properties faster. So it's interesting. Like, are people interested in buying properties faster, or is it buy 5 properties? Sorry. Yeah, just trying to understand what is it about that video specifically that's got someone clicking. And you can't really understand that from just doing one video. So that's why it's important to have multiple different videos. You can understand if you see buy 5 properties faster and you see that across multiple channels working, then it's more likely to be the buying 5 properties as opposed to buying them faster, right? So that's what we're trying to understand in terms of the pattern spotting. What is it that's getting people clicking? Okay, and I would literally, you can come down, you can also use VidIQ, which will show you in terms of like the average performance, how certain videos have performed. And I would literally get anything that's kind of performing 2 times plus, particularly if it's a video that's going to convert for you and drive clients. So I'm just going to come down here a little bit. I think that's what I want to do. Yeah. Again, this one to me would be interesting, even though it's not like the highest viewed. How to quit your 9-to-5 with real estate investing. Again, if that's an ideal client, there's something about that that's worked. So again, I would write it down, because it's not all about views, obviously, right? It's again, we want to make sure that we're creating content that is also going to drive clients. So yeah, I would do that with as many channels and as many people as you can. Just the more you do, the better you're going to understand what will work and what won't. And then the next one is actually quite easy, if I'm honest, is that you would go to, so this first part allows you to understand the property niche. And the second one will allow you to understand YouTube in general, and if there are any patterns that we can take and adapt to the property niche. And this is a way to actually come up with ideas that are unique, right? So I wouldn't go too far as in going to try and find really, really creative channels and that type of thing. Typically, I would look at the business space. So I'd look at people that are really, really good at YouTube, like Alex Hormozy, Charlie Morgan, Ben Heath is pretty good. The finance channels as well. So any of the big kind of finance and business channels, and have a look at what's working on their channels. And then just literally write down videos and titles that have got a lot of views, and then just try to work out, okay, well, is there anything about their title and about their video idea that I can just adapt to the property niche that would make it sound really, really interesting? Particularly paying attention to those power words, right? So how to make money so fast it feels illegal. Like, that just sounds like so fast it feels illegal. There's something about that illegal part that's probably driving curiosity there, right? It sounds different. So how to find property deals so good they sound illegal would be a potential property video that I'd think about there. How the top 1% build wealth in layers. How the top, and again there, I think it's the top 1%, the wealthy people are interested in, that they're curious about how they do that. So then I would start coming up with video ideas like how the top 1% of property investors, I don't actually like that title that much, but beat everyone else, or how the top 1% of property investors XYZ. So something that's relevant to your avatar, right? So, or how the wealthiest 1% or the richest 1% invest secretly in property, or something like that, using that top 1% premise and adapting it to the property niche. That would be something that I think would work really, really well. So that gets us, we then understand our own niche. We understand what's working on YouTube in the broader sense. And then finally, this is actually the easiest way to come up with video ideas, and it's a proven format. Apologies. So you can literally just go to your own channel if you have one and look at some of the highest performing videos, and then work out, okay, well, there was something about that got people clicking and got people watching, and ideally also got people turning into clients on the back end. What was it about that format, and is there a way that we can take that format and adapt it to create a series in a similar style? So in this example, this is a really high performing video, the worst 4 places to buy a house in 2025. I'd probably is used to buy a house here as well, but like the 10 cheapest places to buy a house, the 10 most expensive places to buy a house, the 3 most undervalued cities to buy a house. So really just taking that format that's worked and adapting it again, and how you then adapt it and how you know which words to insert here are going to be based on your niche research. So if you've seen that, the word faster gets clicked on all the time, or cheaper or more expensive or dangerous or whatever it might be, is that, okay, well, now I know that that works in our niche, and I know that this format tends to work well on my channel. So how can I take what I understand about that niche, mix that with what's worked already on my channel, and turn that into a series that you can just do over and over again? Because that's going to help. It's a very proven way to get views on your channel, because it's something that people have already clicked on. So that's one of my favorite ways to come up with video ideas. And a lot of people don't end up doing it because they feel like they're repeating themselves or copying, which is really something you need to get out of your head. They're really the 3 ways to come up with proven video ideas for the property niche. And if you apply them, and I really, really would implore you to spend as much time as you can doing this within reason, because the more you understand about the niche and what works, the easier it's going to be for you to come up with video ideas and understand what's going to work and what won't. And then also what that will allow you to do is, if you genuinely just sit down and do this for a couple of hours, you can come up with 3 months worth, if not a year's worth of content in one go. And it genuinely saves you a lot of time and gets you out of that repetitive week by week trying to come up with the video idea, hoping that it works, and it kind of flops and you don't know why. If you sit down and spend some time doing this, you will understand why and what is going to work in the future. So really, really important task that I get my team to do on a daily, weekly basis. Okay, so then we had a good understanding of both the previous winners and then all of the psychological elements that drove views and leads in the property niche. We then needed to implement 2 very simple things. Firstly, I wanted to clearly define what our USP was. Now, this isn't something that you need straight away, but Property Hub was already an established channel. So I wanted to get clear on why somebody would watch their channel and not the competition. Now, if you want to do this yourself, there is again a worksheet in the YouTube property playbook, but here's what we found for our Property Hub. Now, most of the competition were making slightly longer, less prepared videos with very little storytelling and quite low production value. Whereas Property Hub had decent editing. Rob is a published writer, so he was already using lots of stories in the videos, and only a small proportion of the content was news-based compared to the competitors. And thanks to the size of the Property Hub team and the scale of the deals we work on, we were able to talk about a lot of the topics in more depth and with more credibility than some of the competition who were basically just reporting their opinion, as opposed to actually having spent time in the trenches with actual deals done. So we really tried to lean into that with the USP. So we created a fairly custom editing style. We included even more storytelling in the videos to keep them nice and simple, and tried to lean on our team's research as much as possible, because that has a big impact on credibility and then also the leads that you generate. And this brings me on to the second key point that we discovered at this point. So after going back and forth, we realized that our ideal client is well educated, but not necessarily a property expert. They're likely running a business or they have a high-paying job, so they're cash rich and time poor, and they just want to know what to do with their money so that inflation doesn't rob them blind. However, in a lot of the content, we were using quite complex terms that implied a certain level of understanding of the property niche, basically jargon that people that aren't property investors aren't going to understand. So as we were reviewing the scripts, I had somebody without a property background flag any sentences that could be considered jargon or too advanced, so that the content became 100% accessible to our ideal client. So the next time you are planning out your content, really try to keep your ideal client in mind, not just how you would like to explain it or how you think it's best explained. For example, do they know what the terms yield and capital growth actually mean? Or is that something that you just explained on the sales call? Just because it seems obvious to you doesn't mean it's obvious to your ideal client. Now, the final piece of the puzzle was as follows. So for years, Rob, the 2 founders of Property Hub, they had created content and given free value to potential property investors. They started with the podcast and then later moved on to YouTube and other forms of social media. And honestly, they had done a really, really good job. And when I first started working with Rob, he was very conscious of not wanting to be too salesy and turning YouTube into a big sales pitch, which I completely understood and respected because that's what had got them so far up until this point. But the exercise I went through with Rob and what I'd like to do with you now is to actually break down why you might feel like you're being salesy in a YouTube video. So if I make a video about the next house price crash and after 1 minute I say, by the way, I help people invest in property, so if you want to do that, go and book a call. The reason that feels salesy, not just from my terrible acting skills, but it's also completely incongruent with the message that you're giving in the video. I clicked on a video about a house price crash, and after 1 minute, you're trying to sell me on an investing service. That's why that feels sleazy. Now, let's consider a completely different scenario, and it's actually a live scenario that we used with Property Hub. So you click on a video about, do you actually need a property sourcing company? We started off by explaining who wouldn't be a good fit. Then we explained who might be a good fit, and we quite softly mentioned that that is what Property Hub did. And basically the call to action was, now if you fall into the category of being a good fit, book a call. And if not, I hope this video is useful in you making your decision. Now, there are lots of other ways you could hype up the call to action and make it stronger, but just on a pure basic level, nobody's going to find that sleazy, because you are literally just helping people who are considering a property sourcing company to make the correct decision. Similarly, if you make a video about how to value an investment property, you talk somebody through your personalized spreadsheet and then tell them they can download their own copy in the description. It's such a logical next step for the viewer, and it's so congruent with the content that it doesn't in any way feel salesy or sleazy. And that was where we really saw a big shift for Property Hub's business, not just for the YouTube channel. Because prior to working together, there was no real tracking or clear CTAs in the content, which meant people would just end up on the website or on the newsletter by accident. Whereas now every single video is made with a very clear purpose to take the viewer from A to B, from video to lead magnet, or from video to call. And that's what really turned YouTube from a social media platform that drives traffic into an absolute lead generating machine, which is booking them 40 plus calls every single month and driving thousands of people to download their lead magnets and get them onto their email list. Now, if you're a property company and you want to save yourself a load of time and have somebody set all of this up for you, then you can click on the link in the description to see if it would be a good fit. However, if you want to do this yourself, then firstly, you have the YouTube for Property playbook in the description, which gives you access to all of the resources. And you can click on this video next, where I'm going to talk you through all of the details you need step by step to blow up a property channel in 2026 or 2025. Depends how early you start.